Welcome back to Fortified Lessons on Love and Divorce, hosted by Toomey Family Law. I'm Letitia Braving. Our guest today was the blonde-haired swimmer who captivated our hearts with her tenacity and mind-blowing performance in the pool. Lisa Curry is the only Australian swimmer to have held Commonwealth and Australian records in every stroke except backstroke. She won 7 gold, 2 silver and 1 bronze Commonwealth Games medals and competed in 3 Olympic Games, the last one at the age of 30 as a mother of 2 children. And she was also chair of the National Australia Day Council from 2000 to 2008. But it hasn't just been her sporting talent that has made headlines over the years. Lisa's business acumen and private life have always been followed closely by the media. When Lisa and Ironman Grant Kenny met at the height of their careers and married in 1986, they soon became one of Australia's most high-profile sporting couples. After 3 children and nearly 3 decades together, they decided to call it quits, officially divorcing in 2017. What unfolded after the decision was a life-changing journey of hard lessons and heartache. Having to rebuild her finances and businesses from the ground up again, it has been far from an easy ride. Lisa joins us on the couch today to share her story on life, love and divorce, and learning to trust again. And of course, the wonderful Lisa Toomey joins us as always. Ladies, welcome. Lisa and Lisa, this is going to get confusing, so I might have to give you nicknames. LT, LC. Now, tell me, Lisa, you were an amazingly successful sportswoman, but you're an amazingly, to this day, a phenomenal businesswoman. Let's talk about your early days when you met Grant, because you were already a successful sportswoman at that point, and he was an Ironman. What was it like? What was your relationship like in those early days? Because you were together for a very long time, nearly 3 decades.
We were very young. So he was 19 and I was 20. And I had only just become Lisa Curry because of the Brisbane Commonwealth Games. And we met very coincidentally and had a couple of photos together, and then media put 2 and 2 together and thought, oh, wow, Lisa and Grant are together, and then it became news, of course. But in our world, we were just Lisa and Grant and having a great time together. And remembering in those days, there was no social media, there was no selfies, there was no self-promotion of anything that we did. We just did what we did, and we both trained, we both worked, and we got married young, and it was great.
So with that, being so young, being high-profile athletes, did that put pressure on the relationship, or did it just make it fun?
No, pressure is something that's put on by other people. We just lived our lives, and, you know, no one else knows what happens behind closed doors, and we just lived our lives and just did what we did, and occasionally there'd be a photo of us somewhere, unlike today.
Yeah, it would be a totally different beast these days, I think. And, I mean, you're still in the limelight.
Aren't people sick of me by now? 40 years, yeah.
People love you. Australians love you. I mean, we grew up with watching your face coming out of the pool and doing Australia proud. I guess people are interested and invested in you, and that must, like you say, put a lot of pressure on you from that perspective, feeling watched.
Well, ever since I was at school, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a phys ed teacher. And I guess in a way that's where my mentality has been all this time, all these years. And I think now I'm still, you know, in my business, Happy Healthy You, is still educating women in their health and wellness. So it's who I am. It's what I've done the whole time, and it's not for everybody. Grant, for example, hates the media. He doesn't like being on stage speaking. You know, he's quite reserved and very private, whereas I'm completely opposite and love to have a chat, love to meet people, love to help people and get out and about.
So it sounds like a great balance. I think if both people are in the limelight and, you know, one is happier taking the lead over the other, that's probably a good balance. So where did things start unraveling?
Good question. I think as you meet someone when you're young, you have the same interests. And then as time goes on and as you understand that person more, you probably start to realise that you're not as similar as you thought you were. But that's okay, because my current husband, we couldn't be more different. We are completely different people, but it's our differences that makes life exciting. So, we were together for 28 years, which is a long time. And I just wanted to, I love traveling and I loved camping. And I ended up traveling and on my own. I ended up, going to lots of functions on my own. And I thought, this is not what it's supposed to be. But to be honest, in hindsight, we probably could have made it work. We probably could have compromised more. We probably could have talked about it more. But at the time, it's hard to find the right advice from people when you're going through a tough patch. We never went to any counsellors or anything like that. We just sort of dealt with it ourselves.
Yeah, and it is tough. And I know you and I spoke about this off camera, where we're not taught as children how to have relationships. We're not taught emotional intelligence. We're not taught how to manage finances. Like, there's so much we're not taught at school. And I know that other guests are saying we should be taught these things. Is that, and we can come back to this later, but is that something you think we should have more of a focus on when we're raising our children?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why learn Japanese at school if you're not going to, use Japanese in your life? Why are we learning, ancient history at school? Why aren't we learning accounting and banking and finances and learning, how to write a business plan and learning relationships and red flags and communication and, vocabulary and learning about real life things? But it's interesting because it's 6 billion people in the world. And yet the one guy that walks past you and that's my husband, that's the one. It doesn't necessarily mean that's the one forever, or it might be forever. But
it's a bit like, isn't it, Lisa? It's trial and error, isn't it? You throw one into it and, it either works or it doesn't. But, hats off to you and Grant, because you had a very long relationship. You had some beautiful children. And, it was a really respectful relationship, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And I know that because when things ended, Grant and Lisa were both very respectful towards each other, even in separation. And that says a lot about both of them.
Yeah, and that, sorry, Lisa.
Yeah, no, I remember the day that we actually sat down on the end of the bed and talked about this at home. And
right.
It was really sad.
Yeah.
But it was very amicable, and we knew exactly what we were doing and why we were doing it. And to take it softly and gently and slowly for the kids. And, of course the media jumped onto it pretty much straight away, which makes it more difficult. But, to lighten the whole conversation, the first thing I did when I moved out, but the first thing I did is I put pink sheets on the bed and I put flowery prints all over the walls. I was so happy waking up being, I got such a pretty bedroom. I mean, it sounds pretty dumb, really. But
some people cut their hair. You put new sheets on the bed. I mean, what do you do?
But even now, like, Mark doesn't mind the pink sheets. He says, I got my eyes closed anyway. It doesn't matter. But isn't it funny how, something as simple as putting pink sheets on your bed is what it takes when you separate. It's like you change and you just do exactly what you want to do. I have seen people and friends in really toxic relationships, and they stay there, and they stay there for a long time. And
why do you think that is? Why do you think your friends, people who are staying in those relationships?
They're scared to leave.
Yeah. Is it financial?
Financially scared to leave because it might leave them nowhere with nothing. They have to start again. And, one of the biggest lessons that I talk to people about is in relationships, looking for the red flags early. I had a friend years and years ago who her husband would call her 20 times a day. Where are you? Who are you with? What are you spending your money on? It's like, you're kidding me. Like, how can you live like that?
So classic DV, classic coercive control. Yeah.
And not necessarily physical, but that's emotional DV, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So on that, in the beginning when you were looking and discussing with Grant, should we separate? What does that look like? And I believe you approached Lisa for some advice. How did that transpire?
I had seen, I'd seen you, I think, maybe in the newspaper or ads on TV or something, and I thought, I want to be with that woman. She looks like she could win any fight. And Lisa and I have been, friends for a long time and have shared a lot. And I think there's nothing you don't know about me. And, you have to trust somebody, and you have to know that that person's got your back. They're on your side. But Lisa wasn't only just on my side. You were also on Grant's side. And he's very appreciative of that too, that you really helped both of us. And that made it easy for us to continue on, the journey of what happens when you separate.
So I think it's important to point out that when Lisa came to see me, it was really about, understanding what happens in a separation, how it works, because clearly, first time she's ever been through it, she just didn't know what was involved. So we went through that process, but she made it abundantly clear to me that she and Grant were on good terms, that she wanted to remain on good terms with him. And, knowing that made it easier for me because then I knew instinctively how this was going to actually pan out, because we had cooperation and collaboration, so to speak, from really both of them to get through this. I make it clear I didn't act for Grant. I didn't give him any advice because I'm not allowed to, but it was I think because they were both very mature about it and were very respectful towards one another, it made it a much more seamless process, didn't it, Lisa?
It did. Yeah. And even today, we get on really well. I can sit on the couch with him and have dinner, no big deal. Put a photo on social media of both of us and, everyone goes off. It's like they can't believe that we can still be friends.
Right, okay, which is really amazing because that's the way it should be. That level of and particularly because you have so much history that I think you are both an amazing example of how it can be.
But unfortunately, it's not always like that because depending on the circumstances, maybe you don't never want to see your ex-husband again or your ex-wife ever again. But, one thing I do want to talk to you about, and it's a really good discussion, I think, is growing up. I mean, you call me a businesswoman. I don't see myself as a businesswoman. I don't even know how to bank a check.
All right,
let
so
alone,
you didn't do hot curry. You haven't got happy hormones.
I know.
Like, okay, let that go.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying. But so growing up, I wasn't very I don't even know what the word is.
Financially, it had much interest
savvy.
In financial stuff. Yeah. Understand.
So I wasn't particularly interested in it. I didn't concern myself with it. I was busy with the kids.
Yep.
Grant was the one that did all of that. We had an accountant. We had a PA. And so I didn't feel the need to try and understand all of that side of a relationship until we went together. And then I thought, wow, I actually don't even know how to write a business plan or how I sort my finances out. I had no idea. I had no idea about anything. I was in the dark, completely in the dark. And if there's one thing that I want teenagers, particularly girls or women, to understand from this podcast is understand how to look after yourself from day dot.
From a financial perspective, don't take your eye off the ball. Well, I'd
get things put in front of me and say, "Can you just sign here?" And I just sign them because there's a complete level of trust, not only with your husband, but your accountant, your lawyer, your solicitor. You know, you sign things, you don't ask questions, and you should ask questions. But sometimes if you do ask a question, you get in trouble. Why are you asking? You just sign it, you know, because sometimes if there's coercive behaviour in a relationship, they don't want you to ask questions. Just sign it. I know I signed a form one day. I didn't read it. And I just signed a form for a new car. Grandad bought me a new car. I didn't want a new car. I liked the car I had. It was a little red runaround and, you know, had cute little car seats on it, and I liked that red car. I said, "Where's my car?" He said, "Oh, we sold it." But I signed this document without asking the question. We shouldn't do that. We should be able to know what is happening in our lives. So I think, you know, financial literacy is what young girls, women, even, you know, some young men need to have in their lives from a very early age, so that it's very easy to get things done when everything's going right.
Yeah.
But what happens when things go wrong? And that's what you have to plan for.
And that's probably one of the biggest issues that we have in, you know, in the family law world regarding property settlements, is people coming to us and saying, "I have no idea what's been going on. I've just been signing forms. I've just been doing what I've been told to do. I don't really understand where our money is, or I don't really understand what we have." So you're exactly right. I mean, people, men and women, shouldn't divest that level of control to one partner in the relationship, because it is a concern when it comes to, and if it may come to, a separation. I agree with you.
But often women are at home, you know, they've got their job, but they're looking after the children,
Exactly.
They're doing the washing, they're doing the cleaning, they're doing the shopping, they're
and it's the
cooking
last
meals
thing they want to think about, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm curious, Lisa, anecdotally, have you seen a shift with some of the younger people coming through divorces? Like, have they got more of an idea of what's happening, or is it literally multi-generational?
Letitia, I'd love to say yes, but no. It's still that same element of not knowing, you know, coming through and not knowing what's going on. There are certainly more young women in the workforce. There's no doubt about that, and they're out there, you know, with you know, very good jobs and earning very good income, but still not understanding what's happening if they have a business together, or what's happening from the financial side. I don't know why, but
just relinquishing all control.
Yeah, it is still something that is occurring. And
I think, is it because it's actually awkward to talk about? You know, all of a sudden you think, "Oh, I found the love of my life. Now, can you just sign this partnership agreement to say that you won't take anything that I've had, because I've had this business for the past 10 years. Like, that's a hard conversation to have. And it kind of says to the other person, "I love you, but I don't trust you," just in case something happens. But we have to have these conversations.
Well, you're a classic example. You're remarried to Mark, who's a wonderful man, and you're very happy. But you had to talk to him about that.
Yeah, and there was an awkward conversation, but we had. I kept putting it off, but we've had it, and it's all good, you know. But you have to have the hard conversations.
And since you've had it and you've reached some sort of agreement about it all, has that lightened the load between you both a bit, from talking about that financial stuff?
I'm not sure. Not sure. Maybe we shouldn't talk about that. I have this new age philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe, you know, for younger people growing up, getting into a relationship, what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, and what's ours is ours. It used to be what's yours is yours and what's yours is mine. No, but what's yours is yours, what's mine is mine, what's ours is ours. And then people can just, you know,
get on with it.
Well, what's ours is ours means that something that we do together, particularly in maybe an older marriage, you know, where you're set up from before. You know, I've had friends who have lost half of what they have having a partner come in, and just because they've lived with them for What's the amount of time? Less than 2 years?
De facto relationship definition is 2 years or more, but you've got to acquire, significant property together to get under that 2-year benchmark. But let's call them short-term relationships between 0 and 5 years, right? Between 0 and 5 years, yes, there's going to be something there potentially in relation to a claim.
So someone can take half.
Not half,
Or
because we
some.
have a contribution base, but there is something there,
Yes.
depending on what the structure is. So, there's always that risk, but that's why we talk about binding financial agreements so much.
And this comes back to the literacy of understanding the law, finances, what your obligations are, and what happens in relationships. Because I know even from the de facto perspective, many people do not understand what a de facto relationship is and the legal risk and financial implications of that. But also, with FIFO workers, people don't understand that even if they've work away 3/4 of the time but come back and live with you, that's still classified as de facto.
Yeah,
in some instances.
That is a very interesting area, the classic FIFO worker. And there have been some decisions where they haven't been classified as de facto, but every case has its own particular nuances with respect to the de facto application. So
you can see how people can be so confused about relationships and about where they stand
yeah.
after how much time, who gets what. It's confusing.
Yeah. And that confusion can lead to a lot of anger and built up resentment because they've got people in their ears telling them, oh, you deserve this, you'll get 50-50 or you're entitled to this. And they're not basing it on any area of law that they're actually conscious of and have any say in. But then you, Lisa, have to have to then unpack that and say, well, actually, no, that's not true, and sort of unwind that. Do you find that a lot?
Managing the expectation from the build-up from the cheer squad is part of the battle. Yeah.
So, Lisa Curry, what's one thing you wish you had have known going into your first relationship and first marriage?
Oh, I don't know. I thought I knew everything.
Don't we all at that age?
Well, you do. Everyone has their ego. Everyone thinks they know everything, and you live inside your bubble and you think your world is the best. But when you really look at it, there's lots of bubbles everywhere. Everyone's in their own bubble. I don't know. I feel like I knew enough. I was happy. I lived my life. I did what I did. I got what I got, and I don't regret anything, actually, except that I wish I had known more about the financial literacy because, that probably would have helped me for later on. But, I went through a few years there where I basically had to start from scratch. So, and that was hard. But I got through it okay, and I had good friends that, kept propping me up and saying, you'll be okay, you can do it. And, you have to rely on yourself, everything you've learned, what type of person you are to get through the tough times.
Curious, when you were going through those tough times after the divorce and, as you say, you had to rebuild yourself emotionally and financially, what got you through that? Do you think being, a professional athlete gave you some tools that perhaps others might not have in their back pocket to be able to get through it?
Absolutely, being an athlete gives you some tools. I mean, you don't go to 3 Olympics without having that toolbox. And even now, today, I think, how would I have done this when I was an athlete? What would I have done? How would I have done this as a coach? How would I have approached this? So I have all those tools, and I'm very grateful. And everything I've done has led me here today. So, yeah, I can't complain much. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that wasn't the answer you were looking for, but
I'm just curious.
I'm actually quite happy and grateful for everything that I've had, the ups and the downs, the good and the bad. I've had a really tough time and lately, and Grant and I still stick together over that, I guess we're just lucky that I'm a nice person and he's a nice person, and we've been able to get through it.
You're very much into natural health and looking after yourself mentally, physically, emotionally. Was there a particular, is that something that you recommend other people if they are going through a tough divorce or just a tough time in life to really focus and put energy into those areas to get you through?
Absolutely. I think when you're down, whether you've just been divorced or through a terrible relationship or you've lost someone like we have, and what I didn't do and what I knew I should have done, but I was so down, I didn't do it, but don't sit. Don't stay still. Your body becomes stagnant. Sadness, soreness, stagnant, and you don't make good choices with your food. So even when times are tough, go for that walk on the beach, because it's in those times that you start to be clearer in your thinking. And instead of sitting at home going, oh, my life's so bad, you can't think. So go for a walk and you can think clearly and try and eat as well as you can, because you need to nourish your body. You need to nourish your brain so you can make good decisions.
Lisa, I know when clients are coming to you and they're in that really tough time, you can definitely make referrals and do make referrals to people to see other professionals, counsellors,
sure, like
therapists.
Psychologists. Yeah, exactly. It's really important. I've always said that I really need a client who's I'm working with to be ready to make really important decisions and to understand what I'm saying, and they need some clarity. And I'm a lawyer. I'm not a psychologist. I don't therapize people, but I do send them to experts who can work on them so that they're in a really good place to be able to give me instructions on how they want to proceed.
Well, that's also a legal requirement. They have to be able to give
capacity.
you
That's
capacity.
Exactly right. That's a really big issue.
Because there have been times when I've gone to Lisa and I'm just a bawling mess. And, how can you function? How can you think straight when you're in that state of mind? So capacity is important.
And I think, just to qualify Lisa's grieving, that was really about, I guess, a lot of stuff. That was about the loss of the relationship and all of that was coming out. And it kind of just, it was like a tumbleweed, wasn't it? It just kept going. But,
I think you copped most of it because I hadn't seen a counsellor. And having to divulge things, having to explain things, talk about things when you haven't before, it's hard. And, someone has to be the sounding board for a while. And I remember when I was training for the Olympics and I'd go into the gym with my personal trainer, and for the first 5 or 10 minutes, I'd sit there and vent and cry. And then he'd say to me, are you ready to train now? But you just had to get things off your chest first.
But it's energy stored in your body, so you've got to release that. It's energy in motion, and I think we don't give enough credit to the impact our emotions and thoughts can have on us, and we're seeing huge levels of depression and all sorts of things in society. But if we build up that emotional literacy at a young age for our children and teach them those coping mechanisms, simple, go for a walk on the beach and let the sun shine on your body, those little things every day build up. Now, in terms of your, we'll call it a conscious uncoupling. I know that's a very new age term, but it did sound like a very amicable divorce. Lisa, from your position, do you feel like that's A, rare, and B, what actually helped them have an amicable relationship post-divorce?
So, yes, look, in my world, it is rare because people who come to lawyers usually are in high-level conflict. It's a matter for the lawyer to actually work the client through that and see if they can try and diffuse the situation. And the end game is really to get a settlement, get people getting on with their lives. That's the goal, and that should be the goal. And we have an obligation as lawyers to do as little harm as possible to a really high-level, difficult situation. So, if you can work from that premise, then you're doing your client a justice. But with Lisa's circumstances, I'd have to say, because fundamentally Grant and Lisa still had a friendship, that helped. They wanted to keep that friendship. That was really important to both of you, wasn't it? Yeah. And so having that as an underlying feature of their separation made it the transition a lot easier. It made the decision-making a lot easier. It made to getting to the result a lot easier because they just wanted to get it done. Like typical athletes, get in there, get it done, get it gone, Nothing wrong with that. Great way to think. And that's the way they approached it.
Although it took about 9 years to get divorced.
Well,
I didn't want to bring that up, but I was going to. I was going to say, I'm not sure.
That's the actual divorce.
I kept saying, Grant, do you reckon we should get divorced yet? And he said, I don't have time this week, which is kind of funny. And then we just laughed it off and moved on. There was for us, there was no hurry.
But that was a classic example of their relationship. They just didn't see that there was, that was just something that they were eventually going to get around to 9 years later.
And what was the final push to get that piece of paper eventually signed?
Oh, because my now husband, Mark, proposed to me.
That'll
so
do
I couldn't
it.
be engaged and married at the same time.
Well, you could in certain countries.
I know.
So tell me about going into this relationship with Mark, because it does sound like a beautiful relationship. And were you concerned, or were you hesitant? Were there any sort of leftover feelings from the split with Grant that made you go into this one a little bit differently?
I was a little slower in going into it, just thinking of all the pros and cons, and I certainly wasn't going to take his name because it took me 10 years to change everything from Kenny over to Curry. It is so hard. It's like it's easier to fly to the moon than change your Medicare card. Seriously, it's just, everything takes such a long time.
Yep.
But, we obviously, because we're older, you have more of an opportunity to talk about things that through experience, and we didn't have any experience when we were 19 and 20, So it's much easier when you're older, more mature, both been through it, know what we want, know where we want to go. And, once again, though, still having advice to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted.
I'm assuming you're talking about a binding financial agreement. Yeah. How did you guys approach that conversation? Do you have any advice on that front? Because some people say, I could never ask for one. That would just imply that I don't trust them, and they get really concerned about it. Do you have any advice on that front?
Well, it took a long time to be able to talk about it because of exactly that, but you just have to have an adult conversation.
Yeah, but I think also, Elise, your motivation was really about leaving something for your children and your grandchildren. I think that was really the reason why Elise wanted to go down that track, because you worked really hard. You're right. You've had a really hard-looking 10 years, and you've got yourself to a situation where you've done extremely well, and you just wanted to make sure you had something there for your kids and your grandchildren.
Yeah. I mean, your legacy is in your own children and in the lineal descent. And, but in saying that though, I spoke to my accountant not long ago and I was tossing up whether to fly business class or not. And he said, Lisa, if you don't fly business class, your kids will. And I went, oh gosh, you're so right. I'm sorry, kids. And he said, do you deserve it? I went, yeah. And he goes, well, what do you, stop worrying about it.
Yeah.
It was only one flight, but, there's so much to it, isn't there? I think you could almost write like a whole curriculum on this for school. And, to be honest, it may be people getting married should do a 6-month course first before getting married to tick off all these things to see if marriage is for them, because the divorce rate is up near 70% now.
Something 2 out of 3.
There you go. Something ridiculous. Why? Because they haven't found the right person, or because of course when you're in a new relationship you're always trying to impress each other, and then reality sets in, and there's that little red flag. And then you either ignore it or you go, hang on, that's a red flag. And then you see another red flag. There it is again.
You know,
and then it's hard to walk away.
Yeah.
Or you feel bad about walking away.
Yeah.
You feel pressured. Friends, family, religion, whatever it might be, you can't walk away. So you put up with it. And should you? Is it good enough? Is good enough good enough? Is good enough where you should be? Or do you deserve more?
But I think you're right. I mean, you know, relationships, marriage, de facto, they're the fundamental basis of our society. And to not have, you know, an early education about how it works and what to look out for, as you're saying, you know, is crazy, because it would make a lot of sense to have that taught in schools, because I think that it's just the way of the world.
And it is crazy, like you say, because the financial impact of divorces and separations on the government in terms of parenting payments and all of those sorts of things, the stress on the courts, obviously domestic violence is a whole other issue. But it's such a big economical issue. Not only that, it's passing generational abuse down the line. If people are seeing dysfunctional relationships and go, oh, that's what a relationship is, and then they go and perpetuate that, and it's kind of really, as you say, Lisa, mind-blowing that we don't teach our kids this at a young age. And sure, it's our parents' responsibility theoretically, but if they weren't taught and their parents weren't taught, how are we actually going to stop this cycle?
Well, how many children do we see coming from dysfunctional parents? I mean, I just don't think that you can rely on parents to educate their children about the way, you know, maybe relationships should really function.
Coming back to your passion, Lisa, of teaching people to look after themselves, to nourish themselves, mind, body and spirit, you know, I think that's a really important lesson that you're probably imparting through Happy Healthy You as well.
My life is about empowering others to feel worthy, to feel like they belong, that they're not alone in what they're going through in their lives. And I think that's really important, because a lot of people do feel very unsafe and lonely and no one understands. But when you put out there how you're feeling, all of a sudden you have a tribe of women around you.
Isn't that interesting?
Looking after you.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to sit down on the couch with you, because, you know, I want everyone to realise that going through a separation, it's not just them, that, you know, there is a whole bundle of people from all walks of life who have been through it. And I think it's important that, you know, people who have profile like you give that information out, so that, you know, people know it's normal about what they're going through, because you went through it.
We have over 500,000 women in our Facebook group pages. So often our women are talking about anything that's happening in their lives. And it's interesting, because everybody else comes in and comments and helps that one lady who's going through something. But a lot of people feel afraid to be on their own. I think it can be quite liberating, the freedom that you can have to be on your own. And you get pink sheets, yes. My husband loves his pink sheets now. They're flannelette too at the moment, because it's cold. But don't be afraid to be on your own. Don't force trying to find somebody. That person may be the most unexpected person that walks into your life, like Mark was. He literally
go on, tell the story. I love the story. You go to one of his concerts, you were sitting in the front row.
Oh, well, no, I was walking from Melbourne to Portland, 400 kilometres, and raising money for a children's charity. And I was with my ex-partner then, and Mark came along halfway through the walk, and he did a show to raise money for the children's charity, and he sang Can't Help Falling in Love, and his eyes pierced my head as he was singing it, And I'm watching him like, that's awkward.
Because you're sitting beside your boyfriend at the time.
He wouldn't stop staring at her while he's singing the song.
Oh, go Mark.
I
Pass
know.
it over.
But he said he was trying to impress me.
Well, he clearly did.
He clearly did. But it wasn't, I mean, I didn't even have his number. He didn't have my number. We didn't connect again for another, 3 or 4 months. And it was only then that we laughed about it. But we both found ourselves single at that time. So, yeah, it was pretty funny. But he has this look. Hope he doesn't do it at every show. No, I know he doesn't because I'm in the audience.
One of the things you were talking about with the Facebook community, which I wouldn't mind talking about quickly, one of the things that I've heard not only you say but other women is when they're approaching menopause, that can be a really, really scary time, even perimenopause, because women aren't talking about it. Doctors aren't talking about it. We're not taught about it at school, that's for sure. But it can have major, major impacts on our relationships.
Absolutely.
And I know your experience with menopause led you to establish Happy Healthy You. Can you tell me a little bit about that? And is this something that women should consider?
Well, it wasn't my menopause. It was perimenopause or just PMS. But there were many times with Grant that I lost my shit. I was a moody, cranky cow. And I slammed the door one day, put a hole in the wall with the doorknob, and found myself on the floor in tears saying, "You don't understand, you don't love me, rah, rah, rah," but I was just hormonal. I was fine the next day. I was fine the day before. So it was every 5th day before a period where I'd feel like this. So this is the hormonal imbalance, and our hero product is Happy Hormones, which helps with hormonal imbalance. Now, if you can imagine in a relationship, if you're feeling like that and your husband doesn't know how to deal with that, like he will just walk out the door and go to work and come back way later and hope that he comes home to a happy household. So clearly we have products to help that now. But before we started talking about these emotional issues with women, it was the cause of a lot of relationship breakdowns where men just went, I don't even want to be near this hormonal bitch in my house. It's not
just the
you.
label, the psycho that comes out, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Oh,
But-
she's psycho.
Yeah, we've heard it from men. But if men can understand what's happening with their wives, with their partners, with their daughters, then they can start to be a little bit more sympathetic that it's part of being a woman.
Yep.
So if you can imagine a man being in the household and he's got 4 daughters and they're all going through it at different times of the month, like, he could just tear his hair out. And I remember Jet saying to me when he was probably about 14, he'd say, "Mum, the girls are so hormonal." I'm just roll his eyes and just go up to his room because we talked about it, because he knew the symptoms. He understood.
Yeah.
But it needs men to understand.
Yep.
And, some women might get off on murder charges because they've been hormonal. Don't leave that knife flying around in the kitchen. Probably
Lisa, as a lawyer, is going, I'm not sure that's true, Lisa.
let's probably not put that on. But, there has been cases.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot behind that, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's more than just a bit of PMS. And I know, but as you say, and rightly so, we're all very different in our biological makeup. So we all react to it very differently. And there are women who are completely extreme. And I know there are ones who just have had nothing.
Of course.
It's just been a very short little...
But unless you talk about these symptoms, which is what
And have that
happens in our
self-awareness.
groups, unless you talk about it, you don't understand it. So being with Mark now, who's a really soft individual, he has taught me not to be so reactive. So when things go wrong now, I'm so calm, I don't give a shit. I just go, whatever. But that's Happy Hormones as well. It just gives me that calm, And but going back to our groups, women feel like they belong. They know that they're not alone. We cover all of these issues and more. And, libido as well is a big one in relationships too. Like when it starts to wane, when you go through menopause and you feel like you've just dried up, what do you do? The men have needs, women don't care, but we talk about all these things, and some of it's funny, some of it's sad, and some of it's, it's very real, but at least we're talking about it.
one thing we haven't talked about much over the past few years is that there are stages of life. You know, we've covered your stages of life from, 20-year-old meeting your husband, having 3 children, going through all of those life stages, and now in your second marriage and going through that next stage. It's just, life is beautiful like that. There are many, many cycles to it, where we do have that opportunity to grow and flourish and see the beauty in it. It doesn't have to be, well, this marriage failed, so I'm a failure, which a lot of people wrap their identities up around, well, I've done, I should stay for the kids.
And the fear of failure will turn a lot of people off even trying to pursue something new. You know, you get the 50-year-old divorced lady who has been left, husband's run off with a 30-year-old or something, and they've got no financial literacy. They don't know where they are. They've just got to start again. Where do they go? And there's a lot of people who are starting over again. But my message to them is, you'll be okay. And there are people around who will support you and have your back. And everyone's capable of just starting again, finding a new way, a new chapter, and it can be better than it ever has been before.
That's a beautiful sentiment, and you are an inspiration with everything. It's so wonderful sitting here and listening to your story and hearing how hopeful you are, because I think that's potentially the key with you. You've always had that hope, and even in the darkest times, it sounds like you've known you'd get through it. And that's really inspiring to just be real and be real in the public space, which takes a lot of vulnerability and courage.
Yeah, and that's interesting because people who know me know this is how I am. Like, there's no pretense with me. But being in the public eye, people who don't know me, they have this perception of me. And sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. And it's interesting how some people will just, the trolls online are just horrific. They're just awful. And they don't even know me. They don't know anything about me. They'll only take what they want and make a
It must be really difficult because they do. You're judged in that space, aren't you? And I don't know how you cope with that, because that would really be debilitating over a period of time.
I have said to a couple of trolls, why don't you get offline and go and do something joyful, because life is short. Life is too short to hate what you do. If you don't like your job, quit. Go and do something that you do love. And, you realise this in time, and particularly after you lose someone close, you realise that life is short. And so you should be out there doing exactly what you want to do every single day with the people that you love and enjoying life. That's what it's all about.
And there's so much power in choice. That's what people don't realise. They do have a choice. They've got a choice to leave a bad marriage and start again. And for you, and we've heard it from nearly every single guest, that choice to leave that relationship has opened them up into a new person that was just waiting there to rise up through that. So whilst that choice might be scary at first, you don't know what's going to unfurl. So that's exciting.
It's funny because people they say, oh, you're an elite athlete, you've been to the Olympics, you're strong. I love crocheting. I love potting around in my garden. I love being on the ride-on mower, and I love bacon and eggs for breakfast, and really simple stuff like that. You almost can't imagine me crocheting a big rug in winter when you've been at the Olympics in the best shape of your life. But your sport is a moment in time. You can't do that forever, but it's there to teach you a lesson. It's there to what it makes if you trying to win in what you choose, it makes more of you as a person, and that is more important than what you get out of your sport.
Absolutely. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. I just wanted to thank both of you for coming on the couch today, and Lisa, for your vulnerability and your passion and just sharing of your hope and being that teacher in our communities, which is so widely needed. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Letitia. And thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Follow Toomey Family Law on LinkedIn, Facebook and YouTube for more practical family law support.